The Queens Midtown Tunnel was opened in 1940 by the New York City Tunnel Authority to relieve traffic congestion on the city's East River bridges. As one of the most significant public works projects of the New Deal era, it represented the most advanced tunnel engineering techniques of its day. The tunnel spans 6,414 feet long, connects Queens to Midtown Manhattan, and consists of twin tubes made up of 4 traffic lanes. In the years since its groundbreaking, the Queens Midtown Tunnel remains just as vital to New York City as it did when it opened for traffic. Today, we discover the Queens Midtown Tunnel. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. Perhaps not surprisingly, the inspiration for the Queens Midtown Tunnel was the Holland Tunnel, which opened in 1927 and you may remember from a previous video. Anyhow, soon after, support grew for the constructing of a vehicle tunnel to relieve congestion on the East River bridges. So in 1921, the New York City Board of Estimate appropriated $2 million to the Board of Transportation for the design and construction of an East River tunnel. The Army Corps of Engineers approved the tunnel plan at the end of 1930, but the Great Depression precluded any further spending by the city. Even so, New York politicians would not leave that decade in vain. You see, the Queens Midtown Tunnel was initially proposed in 1921 by Manhattan's borough president Julius Miller, and he caused a little agitation as the Brooklyn borough president James J. Byrne had not even been consulted about these plans. He expressed his displeasure that Queens and Manhattan had offered the Triborough Tunnel without consulting him first. Anyhow, that December, Mayor James J. Walker formed a commission to study traffic congestion on New York City bridges and tunnels. Local civic groups felt that it would be inadequate to increase capacity on existing crossings like the Queensboro Bridge since there were no roads connecting Long Island with Midtown Manhattan. So with that in mind, the city ultimately declined to give its immediate support to the Triborough Tunnel project. In April 1927, civic groups formed the 38th Street Tunnel Committee to advocate for the tunnel. The groups stated that the tunnel would act as a relief corridor for traffic from Midtown Manhattan, which at the time had to use other crossings to the north or south. That June, the city voted to allocate $100,000 towards surveying sites and making test bores. Following news of this allotment, several more civic groups expressed support for the tunnel and urged that it be completed as soon as possible. By February of 1929, 35 civic groups supported the construction of the tunnel. Simultaneously, civic groups proposed a system of tunnels under Manhattan, connecting Queens in the east with Weehawken, New Jersey in the west. The group suggested that the Queens Midtown Tunnel connect with the Lincoln Tunnel, which would cross the Hudson River and continue westward to New Jersey. The planned tunnel would originate at 10th Avenue on Manhattan's west side, run underneath Manhattan streets and the East River, and surface near Borden Avenue on the Long Island City side. The tunnel would contain exits to Oakland Street in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. The 5th Avenue Association further proposed that the city create a bridge and tunnel authority to raise funding and oversee construction and operations. The proposed agency would be similar to the Port of New York Authority, which constructed and operated Hudson River crossings, but the construction wouldn't come till much later. In 1936, Mayor LaGuardia created the New York City Tunnel Authority to construct a twin-tube tunnel proposed 6 years earlier between the east side of Manhattan and Long Island City. The East River Tunnel, along with the Hudson River Lincoln Tunnel, was to form a continuous route from Long Island to New Jersey. Citing the deep division between New York City Coordinator Robert Moses and President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who approved the $58 million Public Works Administration loan for the tunnel, LaGuardia specifically left Moses out of the tunnel authority by stating in legislation that, quote, an unsalaried state official shall not be eligible. LaGuardia sought engineers outside Moses's Triborough Bridge Authority, most notably famed tunnel engineer Ole Singstan, to construct the Queens Midtown Tunnel. Meanwhile, Moses tried to influence upstate politicians to deny the authority, but was unsuccessful when Governor Lehman sided with LaGuardia. In reality, Moses was recognized and needed for a Midtown Manhattan crossing. Instead of a tunnel, he argued that a bridge be constructed at East 37th Street. However, this proposal was never defended with the same vigor as previous Moses proposals, since it would have meant the condemnation of blocks of office and apartment buildings. The demolition would have come at astronomical cost, but the removal of these properties from the tax rolls would have been too much for the city to bear. Anyhow, the power broker Caro argued that the source of the difference of opinion stemmed not from the proposal itself, but from who should control the proposal. Moses wanted to be in charge, but others felt that Ole should be appointed in that position. Before construction began, engineers doing preliminary work drilled out core samples of the earth beneath the East River to be used in concert with what was already known from excavations carried out from prior tunneling efforts in the area, such as the Pennsylvania Railroad Tunnel at East 33rd Street or the I&D tunnels at 53rd Street, which revealed wide variations in the geology of the East River and its shorelines. Where there was solid bedrock, tunnel workers or sandhogs blasted through with dynamite. In other areas, massive circular cutting shields, similar to those used on the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, were hydraulically powered through the ground beneath the river. As these shields were moved, the tubes behind them were lined with rings of cast iron and welded steel. Nevertheless, the geological variations in the project area made for a more challenging, costly tunneling process than encountered through an all-silt or all-rock environment. And let me offer you a little perspective on what that meant in practice. You see, during a 24-hour period, one advance of the tunneling shield, or a shove as it was called, would measure only 2 feet and 8 inches for the Queens Midtown Tunnel. In contrast, a shove during a 24-hour period measured as much as 47.5 feet for the Holland and Lincoln tunnels, both of which were constructed through the more hospitable silt of the Hudson River. Accordingly, Singstad refined some of the techniques used in his earlier tunnels. Additionally, to accommodate the broader cars of the 1930s and 40s, he designed each tube in the Queens Midtown Tunnel to be 1.5 feet wider than a similar tube in the Holland Tunnel. Ventilation buildings were constructed on both the Manhattan and Queens shores to change the tunnel's air. A complete air change in the tunnel takes place approximately every hour. President Franklin D. Roosevelt broke ground for the tunnel on October 2nd, 1936, and with the Walsh Construction Company contracted, construction began on July 9th, 1937. The maximum gradient for the tunnel is 4% for descending sections and 3.5% for ascending sections, though the entrance areas are gated by a toll plaza. To the east, the Queens Toll Plaza is located in Long Island City at the western terminus of the Long Island Expressway, with its original section opening as a 1-mile-long elevated Midtown highway. This expressway extends the line of the tunnel east into Queens. In addition, entrance and exit points are also found at 21st Street. To the west, the Manhattan approaches were designed to handle tunnel traffic and city cross traffic. However, the western systems do not continue the straight line of the tunnel. Because the Manhattan side of the tunnel rises as a bluff overlooking the East River, it was not feasible to extend the line from the tunnel to Midtown streets on a short, direct course without either exceeding acceptable gradients or condemning significant rights of way. To reach the Manhattan approaches, the tunnel alignment shifts south for 6 blocks before turning west, emerging at 2nd Avenue between East 36th Street and 37th Street. On November 8th, 1939, months ahead of schedule, sandhogs digging from the Manhattan and Queens shorelines holed through successfully. And I need to add a little emphasis here. It only took 28 months at a rate of 140 feet per month to drive the tunnel to the point of holing through. Remarkably, and unlike other projects of its era, there were no deaths from the bends, an affliction caused by compressed air of the tunnel. In fact, the Queens Midtown Tunnel was only the second major tunnel project to claim such a success, with the first being the Lincoln Tunnel. The Queens Midtown Tunnel was completed on November 15th, 1940. When it opened, it was the largest non-federal project of its time. President Roosevelt, who broke ground on the tunnel 4 years earlier, was the first person to drive through the new tunnel, with 5,000 lucky New York citizens having had an opportunity to walk through one of its tubes a few days prior. This tunnel enjoyed modest success early on, carrying approximately 12,000 vehicles per day during its first full year in operation in 1941. When Moses finally took over the New York City Tunnel Authority in 1946, one of the main points on his agenda was to argue for improved access to the tunnel. You see, post-war development plans championed new expressway proposals, such as the Queens Midtown, later Long Island Expressway, and of course the unbuilt Mid-Manhattan Expressway. By 1965, the Queens Midtown and Brooklyn Battery tunnels provided nearly 1/3 of the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority's total revenue. In the mid-1960s, Moses proposed the construction of a $120 million third tube for the Queens Midtown Tunnel. The third tube was a part of a master plan to revive the Mid-Manhattan Expressway and provide access from Manhattan to Kennedy Airport via the Ridgewood or Queens Interborough Expressway. When completed, the Queens Midtown Tunnel was to allow for flexibility in handling peak traffic. During rush hour, 4 lanes were provided in each direction. In off-peak hours, 3 lanes were provided in each direction by converting the center tube into a 2-way operation. Combined with new expressways, the project's total cost was projected at $450 million. However, given the increasing sentiment against new highways, Moses's proposal was defeated. To put things politely, the decades were not kind to the tunnel, and the wear and tear or grit of New York City became very evident. So in 1998, MTA Bridges and Tunnels began a 3-year, $132 million rehabilitation of the Queens Midtown Tunnel. During the project's first stage, workers constructed a new roof for the tunnel, which was no simple task. The top of each tunnel comprised of 930 concrete slabs, each of which measuring in at 20 feet long and weighing 8 tons. These elements were suspended from steel brackets and secured by giant steel anchors jammed deep into the concrete shell of the tunnel. However, concerns about the displacement of steel anchors caused by vibrations from the tunnel led engineers to another solution. The new plan called for mounting the brackets to steel rods and essentially gluing them into the shell, using a glue quartz adhesive compound to make them one with the concrete. This project stage, which included replacing wall and ceiling tiles, a new fire protection system, new lights, and other structural work, was completed in 2001. Another $19 million project, which included replacing electrical, mechanical, and communication systems, was completed in 2008, with nearly all work carried out during the overnight hours as to not disrupt traffic. And this really is an amazing story, as aside from minor upgrades to add brighter lighting and new ceiling, the Queens Midtown Tunnel has not really required significant rehabilitation work since President Roosevelt broke ground for the project back in 1936. Well, that was until October of 2012, when Hurricane Sandy hit the New York metropolitan region, submerging 40% of the Queens Midtown Tunnel. The saltwater that flooded inside damaged the tunnel's fixtures, including its lighting, traffic lights, and signals. 10 days after the storm, the tunnel reopened with full traffic access. According to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, however, lingering repairs are still occurring. To carry out the restoration work, MTA Bridges and Tunnels was awarded a 4-year and $236.5 million contract back in 2015. We should also add that the Queens Midtown Tunnel originally had 23 ventilation fans, each the size of a small car. However, they were worn out or exhausted after 65 years on the job. So as part of another $18.8 million renovation, the carbon steel bladed fans were replaced with stainless steel ones, which are easier to maintain. And this is an amazing upgrade, as the new fans, which clear the tunnel of pollutants and carbon monoxide, move 2.8 million cubic feet of air per minute and can completely clear out both tubes every 90 seconds. Another feature that has changed since the tunnel's opening is the original brick roadway, which was replaced with asphalt in 1995. The Queens Midtown Tunnel serves as the westbound terminus of the 71-mile-long Long Island Expressway. The official Federal Highway Administration route log shows the tunnel as part of New York 495. On the Manhattan side, the north-south approaches collect and empty traffic efficiently onto the east-west streets. According to the New York State Department of Transportation, the tunnel currently carries approximately 80,000 vehicles per day. As of April the 11th, 2021, drivers pay $10.17 per car or $4.28 per motorcycle for all tolls by mail. E-ZPass users with transponders issued by the New York E-ZPass Customer Service Center pay $6.55 per car or $2.85 per motorcycle. Open road cashless tolling started on January the 10th, 2017. The toll booths were dismantled and drivers could no longer pay cash at the tunnel. Instead, cameras and E-ZPass readers are mounted overhead on the Manhattan side. Any vehicle without an E-ZPass has a picture taken of its license plate, and a bill for the toll is mailed to the owner. Now, I imagine for people who have to cross this tunnel on a daily basis, these tolls must add up to astronomical amounts. So before we all get depressed thinking about the wasted money spent to drive through a tunnel, let's wrap up this video with some fun facts. Between the years of 1981 and 2011, the Queens Midtown Tunnel was closed one night of each spring in anticipation of the annual Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey's Circus Animal Walk, when elephants marched from Queens through the tunnel to Madison Square Garden. The walk was about 2 miles long, which would have taken a human 40 minutes to complete. Sadly, after the circus moved to the Barclays Center in 2012, the elephant walk through the Queens Midtown Tunnel ceased to take place. But at least the animal activists were delighted. Another fun fact is that Doug Holder once wrote a 72-page book of poems about the Queens Midtown Tunnel. It's called The Man in the Booth at the Midtown Tunnel. The book features a series of poems that shed light on various characters encountered by the author. Overall, the Queens Midtown Tunnel is a significant connection between Midtown Manhattan and Queens. The tunnel consists of 2 tubes that each carry 2 traffic lanes. The southern tube typically carries eastbound traffic to Queens, and the northern tube usually takes westbound traffic to Manhattan. On the Manhattan side is an attractive residential neighborhood with the Queens Portal in the Hunters Point district of Long Island City, a historic entryway to the borough, not to mention a rail and transfer point in the 19th century. The Queens Midtown Tunnel was the first roadway under the East River to connect Manhattan and Long Island, and was a marvel of engineering when it opened over 75 years ago today. A tale that has played out time and again in New York City. And if you'd like to learn more about the tunnels of New York, you can binge watch our playlist on the history of tunnels. Consider supporting the channel by clicking join and subscribe to catch new videos every Thursday and Saturday. Until next time, this is Ryan Socash, signing off.